So this is a beginner's guide to understanding loop statements and how they are implemented in JavaScript. So in our previous classes, we've looked at the different ways in which one can implement their JavaScript into an HTML page, and also we've been able to look at the different ways of creating variables, and then we talked about the conditional statements. So the other way in which one can control the flow of activities in any program using JavaScript is through the use of loop statements. And JavaScript, like any other programming language, gives us a number of loop statements. We have a for loop, we have a while loop, we have a do while loop, and we also have a for each. So we are going to see how each of these loop statements can be implemented in JavaScript. We are going to start with a for loop. So before we go into the for loop, we are going to first create a list of items or an array of items through which we are going to loop through and be able to get to understand these basic concepts of loop statements. So we are going to go ahead and create an array of numbers. This array is going to store numbers starting from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe up to 6. Then we are going to use a for loop to run through these array numbers so that we can print out each number at all the indices for these array numbers. So the syntax of a for loop is simple. Use the keyword for, then into brackets. I'm going to explain this. I'll first declare a variable that we are going to use to monitor the number of iterations our loop is running. So we are going to declare this as maybe I, and I will start from 0, and then we shall have a condition. So this loop will continue running not until this condition here is false. So we are going to say if I is less than numbers dot length. So we want to make sure that I keeps running not until when the length of I, so the length of numbers, is now greater than I, and that's when it will stop. Then here we are going to increment I. So each time the loop runs, I will be incremented. So we are using an increment operator, which is ++. Then as the loop is running, we want to console log here. You can say the number is, and then we use a concatenation symbol to display the number. So each time the loop runs, we want to display the number at index I. Remember, our I starts from a 0. So the first time the loop runs, I will be 0. It means it is going to print the number which is at index 0. And with our knowledge in arrays, we know that an array keeps or stores items or values at different indices. So 1 is at index 0, 2 is at index 1, 3 is at index 2, like that up to 6, which is at index 5. This means that this loop is going to continue running not until it will keep running for as long as I is still less than numbers.length, meaning that it cannot run, this loop cannot keep running if I is greater than the available positions here. So each time the loop runs, we want to print out the number at that particular index. So the first time the loop runs, index I will be at 0. When the loop runs, the for loop will come back and increment I by 1. So in this case, I becomes a 1. Then it will check, is 1 less than numbers.length. Ideally, numbers.length is equal to number of positions here, which are ideally 6. So it will come and check, is I less than the length of numbers? Yes. If yes, it will come and print out the I, and here at this point I will be at index 1, so it will print out the number that is at index 1, which is a 2. So we run this and see. So we already connected this script.js to our index.html in our previous classes. So we already connected it to this index.html, so we are going to go to the browser and be able to execute it via the browser console. So this is our index.html, so we shall inspect, then we go to the console. So we want to check why isn't our loop running. So for I, okay, so run this, refresh, and our browser runs. So it will keep running up to the last index. So when it comes the last index, which is at position 5, the length of ideally this number dot length basically means if I is less than 6, because we have how many positions? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Even though the indices are starting to count from 0 to 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, but it doesn't mean that the positions are not 6. The positions are 6, only that the indices will start counting from position 0. So the numbers dot length ideally means that if I is less than a 6, keep running. The moment I becomes a 7, stop running, because now the 7 exceeds the number of length, the numbers dot length, which will not give us the next number, because we don't have any number stored at position 7 or at the 7th position. So that is how a for loop works at basic level. Then if we want to, the best way you can understand the rest of the loops, we are going now to go to convert this for loop into a while loop, and I want us to pay keen attention to the changes I'm going to make to our for loop so that I can transform it into a while loop. So for me to be able to transform this into a while loop, I'll first of all change from the keyword for to while. Now the while loop does not declare inside its brackets. I'm going to copy this and I'll paste it at the top, the declaration statement. Then it does not have the increment inside the brackets. I'll remove the increment, and then I will say each time we console log I, increment I, so meaning that we are putting the increment inside the while. And then we go ahead and remove this termination symbol, and now we have our while loop. So with a while loop, we declare the variable that is going to help us monitor the number of times the loop is running. Then we put our condition into the brackets, and then after we shall keep incrementing I at the end. So when you're working with a while loop, the increment should be the last statement inside your while loop. So maybe we can add here a 7 and a 8. Then we can go back to our browser and refresh. So you can see that even our while loop is running. Again, I want to emphasize, with a while loop, you first declare the variable outside, then you put your condition here. Ideally now this means this is saying if I is less than 8, because 8 is the number of positions that we have, even though the positions start counting from 0. So if I is less than 8, console log I, console log the number at position which I will be. Now for this case, if it is running for the first time, I is 0. Console log I, then increment I by 1, then it goes back. It will continue running not until this condition here is true. So if I want to transform this into a do while loop, I'm just going to cut this while statement and then I'll paste it here. I'm just going to cut that statement, and then here I'll just put the, let me first undo. So I'll cut that, put the word do. After putting the word do, then I'll come outside that bracket and then I'll put a while, then we terminate. So it means for the while loop to run initially, for the loop to run, for I'm just undoing this, it first checks if the condition is true. But when it comes to a do while loop, the do while loop first runs, then after on exit, that's when it checks for the condition. So this is the syntax of a do while loop. So the same thing applies. It declares the variable outside, then also the increment should be the last statement inside your do while loop, and then the condition. So this one says do, first do. This one says first do. After doing, now on exit, let me check. While you're still running, is the condition still true? Like that. So I'll maybe add here a 9 and a 10. Then I'll run this again. So you see our do while loop is running. So in the next thing we shall look at our for each when we in the next classes. So just use this video to get to understand these concepts, these basic concepts of a for loop and a while loop and then a do while loop. So these loop statements can get complex depending on the block of code that you want to execute as that loop is running. And also they can get complex depending on the nature of the logic that you're trying to implement. You can even have a do while loop nested inside another do while loop. You can have a for loop nested inside a do while loop. So you can have a nested loop statement, in other words, where you can nest a loop statement inside another loop statement regardless of the type. So you can nest a for loop into a do while loop. You can nest a while loop into a for loop. Basically, depending on the logic that you're trying to implement in your control flow statement.